The smell of burnt espresso still lingered in the air when the restaurant fell silent. All eyes shifted from the furious man in the tailored charcoal suit to the trembling young woman standing just a few feet away, her apron stained and her breathing unsteady. No one dared to speak. Not the manager, not the staff, not the wealthy guests. Only the silence remained, thick and almost deafening, as if the building itself was holding its breath, waiting for the next move. It had started like any other day at Elora Bistro, a sleek fine dining hotspot nestled in the heart of downtown Seattle, where every table was booked weeks in advance, and where the notorious multimillionaire investor Cole Whitaker had claimed his private corner table like a throne. Cole Whitaker wasn't just a regular, he was a storm in a suit. Arrogant, precise, ruthless, known for his icy gaze, unforgiving tongue, and the trail of broken egos he left behind with every sip of his imported wine. The staff feared him, management catered to him, and no one had ever dared challenge him, until her. Maya Torres had only been on the job for 3 days. She didn't come from money, nor did she have connections. What she did have was grit, a sharp mind, and a smile that somehow survived life's worst punches. 26, petite, with deep brown eyes and dark curls often tied in a messy bun under her server's cap. She was used to being overlooked. But not today. That morning, she had kissed her abuela on the forehead before leaving their small apartment above the laundromat, promising she'd be home early. She didn't know her life was about to change the moment she stepped into the kitchen at Elora Bistro. It began when Cole arrived earlier than usual, his usual scowl already in place. He barked at the hostess, criticized the music, demanded his water be cold enough to hurt. The staff scrambled. No one wanted to provoke him, especially after what happened last month with the sous chef who was fired mid-shift after Cole made a single call. When Maya was assigned to serve his table, 2 waiters tried to switch shifts. She shook her head. "I've got it," she said quietly. "Are you sure?" whispered Rosa, one of the veterans. He's a nightmare." Maya offered a small smile. "I've served worse." But even Maya hadn't expected what came next. As she approached his table, careful and composed, she caught him staring not at the menu, but at her. Not in admiration, in disapproval. "You're new," he said flatly. "Let's hope you're not as incompetent as the last one." Maya exhaled silently. "Good afternoon, Mr. Whitaker. May I get you started with—" "Don't speak unless I ask you to," he interrupted. A murmur of discomfort passed through nearby tables. Maya's jaw clenched for a fraction of a second, but she nodded. As she placed the silverware, he made comments about her posture, her shoes, even her accent, loud enough for everyone to hear. "Where did they pick you up from? A food truck?" Laughter from his guest across the table, a board member from some firm, echoed through the room. Maya's hands trembled as she poured his coffee, biting her tongue, trying to remain professional. But then he whispered something low, cruel, personal. "You know, people like you don't belong in places like this." That was when something shifted in her. Something deep. Something that had been pushed down for years. The sting of every time someone had told her she wasn't enough, not smart enough, not white enough, not educated enough, not rich enough. And without thinking, only feeling, Maya set the coffee pot down a little too firmly. It splashed. The hot coffee hit the edge of the table, splattering a few drops onto Cole's perfectly ironed sleeve. He froze. The entire room watched. Cole stood slowly, brushing off his sleeve, face dark with fury. "Are you out of your mind?" Maya stared back, her voice steady but shaking underneath. "It was an accident. But maybe, if you spoke to people with respect, they'd serve you with grace." Gasps. Utter silence. Even the kitchen doors had stopped swinging. Cole took a step forward, towering over her. "Do you know who I am?" "Yes," Maya said. "Do you?" Her voice cracked slightly, but not with fear, with fire. For the first time, Cole's lips parted without a reply. His fingers curled around the edge of the table, and for a moment he looked stunned. Not because someone had spilled coffee, but because someone had finally looked him in the eye and told him what no one else dared. The manager came rushing out from the back, face flushed, breathing heavily. "Mr. Whitaker, I'm terribly sorry. Maya, you're not going anywhere," said a voice from the back. It was Mrs. Elora herself, the elusive owner of the restaurant. She stepped into view, tall, silver-haired, her designer heels echoing with authority. "I saw the whole thing." Cole's eyes narrowed. "Then fire her." Mrs. Elora shook her head. "No, but I will ask you kindly to leave." The room held its breath again. Cole's jaw locked. His reputation was built on control, on fear. But in that moment, his power cracked, and everyone saw it. He grabbed his coat. "This isn't over," he muttered. Maya stood her ground. "It never really began," she replied. He left. Doors swung, and the entire restaurant erupted, not with applause, but with something quieter, more meaningful. Respect. But what no one knew was this. That moment was only the beginning, because behind that fiery confrontation lay secrets, scars, and a storm far greater than any coffee spill. And Maya? She wasn't just a waitress. She had her own past. One Cole Whitaker was deeply connected to, but neither of them knew it yet. Maya didn't sleep that night. Her hands were still trembling hours later as she stood by the window of her small apartment, staring out at the distant city lights that flickered through the fog. The apartment was quiet, except for the soft hum of her abuela's old radio playing a faint hymn in the background. Her phone buzzed. 38 unread messages, most from co-workers, a few from unknown numbers, 2 from news reporters. She turned the phone face down and exhaled. "You did the right thing, mi niña," her grandmother said softly from her rocking chair. "God didn't give you a voice just to stay silent." Maya wanted to believe that. She really did. But part of her wondered if she'd just thrown away her future with one defiant sentence. At Elora Bistro, rumors were already swirling. Some said she'd be promoted. Others whispered about legal threats from Cole Whitaker's team. No one really knew what would happen next. Until that morning. Maya walked into the restaurant expecting chaos. What she found was silence. The kind of silence that thickens the air and presses against your chest. Everyone turned to look at her. Rosa walked up, wide-eyed. "He came back." Maya froze. "What?" "This morning before we opened. He met with Mrs. Elora. Door closed for 20 minutes. He didn't say a word to anyone." "Did he?" "No one knows," Rosa interrupted. "But he left behind a note." Maya's heart skipped. She followed Rosa to the break room, where the note lay on the table. Neatly folded, heavy cream paper, black ink. No signature, just 3 words. "Let's finish this." "What does that mean?" Maya asked, feeling her pulse in her throat. "Girl, I have no idea. But whatever it means, you're in it now." Maya sat down slowly, her thoughts spinning. Why would Cole come back? Why leave a note for her? So cryptic, so calculated. He could have filed a complaint, he could have sued, but this felt personal, and it was only the beginning. That evening, the restaurant buzzed with tension. Everyone worked in a kind of synchronized anxiety, polishing glasses they'd already polished, arranging silverware for the 5th time. Maya kept her head down and did her job, pretending not to notice how everyone kept glancing at the door. He didn't come, but the silence was louder than any insult he had ever thrown. Until Friday. The place was packed. A fundraiser dinner for a local hospital had taken over the dining room. Photographers, donors, politicians, and among them, Cole Whitaker. He entered like a storm cloud in a custom navy suit, no tie, a glass of arrogance in his hand. He didn't say a word, just walked past the hostess, made direct eye contact with Maya, and smirked. He took a seat at the bar, ordered water, and waited. She served him without expression, but inside her thoughts screamed. What was he playing at? She turned to walk away. "Maya," he said suddenly. The way he said her name, it was sharp, deliberate. She turned back. "Yes, Mr. Whitaker?" He leaned closer, voice low. "You embarrassed me. In front of a room full of people, you made me look small." Maya blinked, not sure if it was a threat or a confession. "And yet," he continued, "I couldn't stop thinking about what you said." She waited. No response. "I want to talk," he said finally. "Privately." She hesitated. Was this a trap? "Why?" she asked, standing tall. "Because something about you doesn't add up," he replied, "and I don't like unsolved puzzles." That night, Maya found herself pacing her room, the note he'd left still sitting on her table. Her abuela prayed silently in the next room. Maya, however, battled with a question that had no clear answer. What if Cole wasn't just angry? What if he recognized her? Or worse, what if they shared a past she couldn't remember? That's when she did something she hadn't done in years. She opened her laptop and typed his name into the search bar. Pages and pages flooded the screen. Business articles, lawsuits, magazines, gala photos. But buried deep in the results, hidden behind paywalls and forgotten archives, she found it. A newspaper scan from over 20 years ago. Headline: "Child survives mysterious fire. Only one left standing." And there, in the photo, was her, barely 5 years old, in a blanket, eyes hollow. Next to her stood a boy, slightly older, dressed in soot, holding her hand. Caption: Maya Torres, 5, and Cole Whitaker, 7, rescued from orphanage fire. No known family ties. She staggered back in shock. They had met before, not just met, survived something together. He had known all along. Why hadn't she remembered? Why now? The walls seemed to close in as her childhood began to flash like lightning, fragments of smoke, sirens, and a boy's voice saying, "Stay with me." She clutched the edge of the table to stay upright. This wasn't a war between a waitress and a millionaire anymore. It was a collision of two forgotten lives, circling back like ghosts. And whatever Cole Whitaker wanted, he wasn't after revenge. He was after truth. Maya knew then that she had a choice. She could walk away, leave the past buried and move on with her life. Or she could face it, and him, and uncover why their paths had crossed again now. But deep down, something told her this wasn't just coincidence. It was a test of memory, of character, of courage, and maybe, just maybe, of something even greater, a chance to finally reclaim the truth of who she was and why someone like Cole had spent his entire life pretending to forget. She shut her laptop slowly, her reflection flickering in the screen, then whispered aloud, almost like a vow, "I'm not running." Some stories don't wait to be discovered. They knock on your door when you least expect them. And sometimes, the people you least imagine are the ones holding the missing pieces of your life. So if you're still with me now, maybe it's time to hit that subscribe button and stay with this story. Because trust me, what's coming next will change everything. The next morning arrived cloaked in uncertainty. A thick mist hung low over the Seattle skyline as Maya stepped out of her apartment building, the cold air biting her cheeks. She clutched her coat tighter, but it wasn't the weather that made her shiver. It was the weight of truth pressing against her chest. She had barely slept, haunted by the grainy newspaper image burned into her mind. That little girl, that boy, their faces frozen in fear and ash. A shared trauma she had buried so deeply, it only now began to surface in fragments, whispers in her memory, emotions without words. Cole Whitaker had known her. Had he remembered all along? And if so, why now? At the restaurant, the tension was different. Less fear, more curiosity. The staff no longer saw her as just the new girl. Something had changed, something undeniable. Rosa pulled Maya aside between tables. "You all right? You look like you saw a ghost." "I think I did," Maya whispered. Before Rosa could ask more, the front doors swung open with a gust of wind, and there he was again. Cole entered without a word. This time, he wasn't wearing a suit, just a dark wool coat over a black turtleneck. No entourage, no phone, just a stare that locked directly onto Maya the moment he stepped inside. Mrs. Elora emerged from the kitchen, wiping her hands on a towel. Her gaze narrowed as she spotted him. "You said you wouldn't return without a reservation," she called out. "I don't need one," he replied calmly. I'm not here to eat." The entire restaurant paused. He turned to Maya. "Can we talk?" Every instinct in her screamed no, but her feet were already moving. They stepped into the side hallway away from the crowd. Maya crossed her arms tightly. Cole leaned against the wall, silent at first, searching for words. "I thought you forgot," he said finally. "Forgot what?" she asked, her voice sharper than she intended. "That night." "You mean the fire?" He nodded slowly. "I was 7. I remembered everything, every scream, every heat wave, and you didn't let go of my hand, not once." Maya's eyes stung. "I don't remember much." "You were in shock for days. They told me you stopped speaking for nearly a week." Her breath caught. "How do you know that?" "Because I waited," he said. "I asked to see you, but they moved you to another facility. After that, I was adopted. I didn't see you again." Maya took a step back, her thoughts unraveling. "You knew who I was this whole time, even when you humiliated me, insulted me?" "I didn't recognize you at first," he said, voice low. "I thought you looked familiar, but I didn't connect the dots until the night of the spill. Something about your eyes." Her fists clenched. "You let me believe I was just another nobody to you, just another target." Cole looked down, ashamed. "I've spent years building walls, money, power, control. I forgot who I was before the fire. But when you stood up to me, something inside cracked. I saw the little girl who never let go of my hand." Maya turned away, her heart pounding. "You don't get to come back into my life because of some childhood memory," she said. "I'm not some puzzle you get to solve because you're bored." "I'm not bored," he replied. "I'm haunted." They stood there in silence, two broken timelines trying to meet in the middle. Suddenly, a voice called out from the hallway entrance, "Maya, table 5 needs clearing." It was Rosa. Her voice was gentle, but the message was clear. "You don't owe him anything." Maya nodded and walked away. But something about Cole's eyes, so sharp before, now looked hollow. Later that evening, Maya's abuela sat beside her, stirring a pot of sopa on the stove while humming softly. Maya sat at the table, staring at the newspaper photo again. "He remembered me, abuela." Her grandmother glanced over, concern etched in every wrinkle. "The boy?" She nodded. "Do you remember him?" "Only flashes, but it's like my heart knows him, even if my mind doesn't." Her abuela sat down, cupping Maya's hand. "There are wounds so deep even memory can't hold them. But that doesn't mean they didn't shape you." Maya blinked back tears. "Do you think God brought him back for a reason?" "I don't know, Mija. But I do know this. When God reopens old doors, he often does it to heal what was broken." That night, Maya lay in bed staring at the ceiling, her thoughts a whirlwind of past and present. She reached for her phone. No new messages, just one old notification. A calendar reminder. Elora Bistro, 6-month review coming soon. It felt meaningless now. Promotions, pay bumps. All of it faded in comparison to what she was about to face, because Cole wasn't done. And neither was the truth. The next day, he waited for her outside. Not inside the restaurant. Outside. In the rain. Standing under a black umbrella, like a ghost in the grey morning. Maya stepped up slowly. "You're getting soaked." He handed her a second umbrella. "I didn't want to cause another scene inside." "Then maybe you shouldn't show up at my job." "I'm not here to argue," he said. "I'm here to ask for something." "What?" "Your time." She arched an eyebrow. "Time. Come with me. Just 1 hour. I need to show you something." She hesitated. "Maya, I promise. No tricks. Just trust me." That word, trust, echoed in her chest. She didn't trust easily. Not after a lifetime of being overlooked, underestimated, discarded. But something about the way he said it, so raw, so unguarded, made her nod. "Fine. 1 hour." He opened the car door. She slid in, unsure whether she was stepping into closure or chaos. They drove in silence, out of the city, past the suburbs, up into the hills, until they reached it. An abandoned orphanage, half burned, boarded windows, overgrown ivy crawling up the stone walls like old memories refusing to die. "This is it," Cole said, his voice distant. "Where it all happened." Maya stepped out of the car, umbrella forgotten. The building loomed over them like a ghost from their past. And as they stood there, side by side, the rain pouring around them, Maya realized something terrifying and beautiful all at once. They were both survivors, but neither of them had ever truly healed. Not yet. The rain softened as Maya stepped cautiously toward the charred remains of the orphanage. Each footstep squelched against the muddy ground, echoing through a place that once held forgotten children and secrets. Cole followed a few steps behind, hands buried deep in his coat pockets, gaze fixed on the broken stained glass window above the old chapel door. Time hadn't just weathered the building, it had silenced it. "This place should have been torn down," Maya murmured, her voice distant. "They tried," Cole said, "but it's privately owned now. No permits. No one wants to deal with it." She looked over her shoulder. "Then why bring me here?" He met her gaze. "Because there's something inside I need to show you." She hesitated. Her heart screamed to run, but curiosity pulled her forward. Cole reached under the eave, removed a rusted key from behind a loose brick, and unlocked the warped wooden door. It creaked open like a whisper from the past. Inside, it smelled of ash and old wood. Sunlight filtered through holes in the roof, casting eerie shadows along the dust-coated floor. The hallway was lined with crumbling artwork, childish crayon drawings still faintly visible beneath the soot. "This way," Cole said, leading her toward the back. Maya trailed him, her steps careful. Her breath was shallow, each inhale bringing flashes of a fire she couldn't remember but somehow felt in her bones. They stopped at a small door, half burned at the bottom. Cole knelt and pried it open. Inside was a storage closet, long since abandoned, except for a single tin box, partially melted, buried beneath broken wood. He pulled it out, wiped the dust, and opened it slowly. Inside were charred photographs. Some were unsalvageable, others preserved just enough to reveal glimpses. Children in group shots, birthday parties, poorly lit hallways. Maya scanned them, then froze. One photo showed a boy and a girl sitting under a tree in the courtyard, sharing a worn-out book. The girl had a ribbon in her hair. The boy was grinning proudly. On the back, in faded ink, Maya and Cole, July 2002. She stared at it, barely breathing. "I used to read to you," Cole said quietly, "every afternoon under that tree. You were too scared to go to the group playrooms. You'd sit by yourself. I just sat with you." Maya blinked hard. "Why didn't anyone tell me this?" "I tried," he replied. "I wrote letters after I was adopted. They were returned. I even searched for you after I turned 18, but there was nothing, no record. Because my last name was changed," she whispered. "After I was fostered, they changed everything." Cole looked away, pain flickering in his eyes. "I thought I imagined it all, that maybe you weren't real." She traced her finger along the edges of the photo. "Why did you keep this box?" "Because it was the only part of me that felt human." Those words landed like a stone in her chest. Outside, thunder rumbled softly in the distance. They stood there in the silence of old memories until Maya finally asked, "What happened that night?" Cole sat on the floor, leaning against the damp wall. "There was a gas leak," he began. "Someone lit a candle in the laundry room. It exploded. I was reading to you when it happened. We ran. I tried to get the others, but the smoke, it was too fast. I remember dragging you out the side door. You passed out." Maya closed her eyes and suddenly it came, like a wave crashing through darkness. Flames licking the walls, children screaming, the sound of glass shattering, and a boy's voice saying, "Don't let go." She opened her eyes slowly. "I remember." He looked up. "I remember your voice. I remember the heat. I remember the way your hand held mine." They sat in silence, the weight of their shared past thick between them. "I lost everything after that," Maya said. "My family, my name, even my memories." I kept asking why I survived, why I was alone. Cole turned toward her. Maybe we weren't meant to stay apart. She shook her head. You're not the boy from the photo anymore. You became someone else, someone who crushes people just to prove you're above them. His jaw tensed, but he didn't argue. I know, he said, and maybe that's why I came back. Maybe seeing you again was a chance to fix something I broke a long time ago. Maya stood up, her hands trembling slightly. I can't fix everything with apologies and memories. Life doesn't work that way. No, he agreed, rising. But maybe it starts with honesty. She looked at him. Then be honest. Why now? Why did you really come back to that restaurant? Cole hesitated, then finally said the words he had buried under layers of pride. Because I wanted someone to see me. Not the money, not the headlines, just me. And you thought humiliating a waitress would do that? He lowered his head. No, I didn't come to humiliate anyone. I came to test the world, to see if anyone would push back, and you did. Maya stepped back, suddenly overwhelmed. I need air. She turned and walked outside, the rain now a fine mist. Her heart pounded as the truth settled in. Their past was tangled, painful, and deeply unfinished. But something about standing in that ruined building made her feel grounded, as if her identity wasn't something she had to rebuild from scratch. It had been waiting here all along. That night, Maya stood again by her window. The city pulsed below. Her hands held the photograph tightly. She thought of the children who never made it out, of the fire that stole their innocence, of the boy who read to her beneath a tree, and the man he had become. Was she ready to let the past define her future, or was it time to write a new chapter? Her phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number. Tomorrow noon, Elora Bistro, come prepared. No signature, but she knew. It was Cole, and whatever he meant by come prepared, something told her this wasn't about the past anymore. It was about what they'd do with the truth now that it was out. And she wasn't ready, but she was willing. Elora Bistro was unusually quiet that day. The late lunch crowd had thinned out, and a grey, overcast sky painted long, soft shadows through the large windows. Maya stood behind the host stand, nerves coiled tightly in her stomach. She wore her usual uniform, but it felt different now, like armor instead of fabric. Are you sure you're okay? Rosa asked gently as she polished the silverware nearby. No, Maya replied, but I'm here. At exactly noon, the door opened. Cole entered, this time alone again, but something in his presence had shifted. He looked less like a billionaire and more like a man burdened. His coat dripped from the light rain, his hair slightly damp. He approached slowly as if measuring each step. Maya, he said with a slight nod. Upstairs, she replied, pointing toward the private dining room. We'll talk there. He followed her in silence up the back staircase to the quiet, unused balcony room that overlooked the city. No waitstaff, no customers, just them and whatever storm they were about to walk into. The door clicked shut behind them. Maya sat first, across from him. Her fingers were locked together tightly in her lap. All right, she said. Let's finish this, your words. Cole sat back, watching her. I meant what I said. I didn't remember you at first, but once I did, I couldn't stop thinking about how differently our lives turned out. Maya kept her eyes locked on his. Because you were adopted by millionaires, I was bounced through the system. He nodded slowly. And now I'm sitting across from you, wondering why the one person who had nothing was the only one brave enough to hold me accountable. Her jaw tightened. That's not bravery. That's survival. He leaned forward. But I think you're more than that. I think you're someone who deserves more than this, more than waiting tables for people like me. She looked at him sharply. Don't pretend you know my dreams, Cole. I'm not pretending, he replied, pulling a folded envelope from his coat. I did some digging after our last conversation. Your real file, your academic record. You were accepted to a journalism program 10 years ago, top of your class. You didn't go. Maya's face flushed. You had no right to look into that. I had every right, he said. I owe you more than just an apology. I owe you a door back to the life you were supposed to have. He slid the envelope across the table. Maya hesitated, then picked it up. Inside, a scholarship letter. Acceptance to a continuing program in New York, fully paid. "What is this?" she whispered. "An offer," he said, "from someone who used to read to you under a tree, from someone who owes you far more than words." She stood, her chair scraping softly against the floor. "You don't get to throw money at my trauma and walk away feeling clean," she snapped. "You don't get to fix the past with a fancy letter and good intentions." "I'm not trying to fix the past," Cole said, rising to meet her. "I'm trying to give you a future." Maya stepped back, tears beginning to prick the corners of her eyes. "You think I haven't tried to move forward? Every time I got close to something good, the past pulled me down like quicksand." "You're not stuck anymore," he said gently. "I see you, Maya. Really see you." And for a moment, she hated how badly she wanted to believe that. He pulled something else from his coat pocket, a small velvet box. "No," she said immediately. "If this is some kind of romantic—" "It's not," he interrupted. "Open it." Inside, a silver locket, simple, unadorned. But inside, 2 tiny photos, the same crayon drawing Maya had made all those years ago, ripped, singed at the edges, but preserved. "You kept it," she breathed. "I taped it to the inside of a drawer," he said. "It was the only thing I took with me after the fire. For years I didn't even know your name. But I remembered your face, your laugh, the way you said the word books like it was magic." Maya sat again, the weight of the moment crushing. "I can't take your offer," she said finally. "Not because I'm ungrateful, but because I don't want to owe you anything." "You wouldn't owe me," he said. "You'd be reclaiming what was stolen." She looked out the window at the grey clouds stretching over the city. "You really think a new future can erase what's behind me?" "No," Cole said. "But maybe it can redefine it." They sat in silence for several minutes, the only sound the soft hum of traffic far below. Finally, Maya stood. "I need time." "You've got it. And space. I'll disappear, if that's what it takes." She nodded once, firmly. "Then start by walking out that door." Cole hesitated, then picked up his coat and walked to the door. As he opened it, he turned slightly. "You may not remember every moment we shared as kids, but I do. And you were the bravest person I ever knew." He left. Maya sank into the chair, her fingers gently brushing the locket in her hand. The walls felt both heavier and lighter now. She didn't know what decision she would make, but for the first time in years, she felt something unfamiliar pulsing in her chest. Not fear, not pain, hope. And maybe that was the most dangerous feeling of all. That evening, back at her apartment, Maya opened an old box of childhood keepsakes tucked beneath her bed. She hadn't looked inside in years. At the bottom, dusty, worn and bent, was a hospital wristband with her birth name, Maya Elena Ramirez. She held it up to the light, and suddenly, she didn't feel small anymore. She felt whole. Her phone buzzed again, not from Cole, from the journalism program in New York. She hadn't applied, but they had her name. A message popped up. "We're reviewing your eligibility. Video interview scheduled for next week. Welcome back." She didn't know whether to cry or laugh. All she knew was, this story wasn't finished. Not yet. And maybe, just maybe, she'd be the one to tell it. By the following Tuesday, Maya's world had shifted in ways she never could have predicted. She hadn't accepted the scholarship, yet. But something had changed inside her. For years, she'd navigated life like a shadow, unnoticed and numb, waiting tables to survive and avoid the ache of the past. But now, the ache had a name, a face, a history, and a chance to heal. She was finally ready to confront it. What she didn't expect was that the world was watching too. When she arrived at Elora Bistro that morning, cameras were parked across the street. Local reporters, bloggers, even a few influencers filming themselves by the front door. Rosa met her at the back entrance, wide-eyed and whispering, "Someone leaked the story." "What story?" Maya asked, stunned. "Your story. The one about you and Cole. The orphanage fire. The confrontation. All of it. It's all over social media." Maya's stomach dropped. Inside, the staff was buzzing, their voices low but filled with awe. People kept glancing at her with a mix of sympathy, admiration, and disbelief. Maya slipped into the break room and pulled out her phone. It only took a few swipes to confirm it. There she was. Grainy footage from a customer's phone showing her moment with Cole. The spilled coffee, the icy words, and the way she had looked him straight in the eye and said, "Maybe if you spoke to people with respect." The video had over 2 million views. She scrolled further. Posts about the fire, old newspaper clippings, photos of her and Cole as children, side by side. A caption, "From ashes to confrontation, the waitress who stood up to a billionaire and shares a buried past with him." Maya felt her knees weaken. Rosa helped her sit down. "You okay?" "I didn't want this," she whispered. "I didn't ask for any of this." "But maybe it needed to be told," Rosa said gently. "Sometimes people don't know they need to hear a story until someone brave enough decides to live it out loud." Maya looked up at her friend. "I'm not brave. You didn't spill that coffee on purpose, but you stood your ground. That's more than most of us would have done." Maya exhaled slowly, trying to steady her thoughts. Across town, Cole sat in his high-rise office, staring at the same video. His team had called an emergency meeting. His PR manager, a tightly wound woman named Julia, was pacing the room. "We're bleeding credibility. The internet loves her. They hate you. You're trending for all the wrong reasons." "I don't care about trending," Cole said flatly. "You should," she snapped. "You humiliated a waitress and it turns out she's your childhood trauma twin. This is a PR disaster." "She's not a disaster," he said, almost under his breath. "What?" Cole stood, buttoning his jacket. "Cancel the interviews. I'm handling this myself." "You can't just waltz into this, Cole. You need strategy." "I don't need spin," he said. "I need truth." He walked out before anyone could stop him. Back at Elora Bistro, Maya took a deep breath and walked into the dining room. Customers applauded. It wasn't loud or chaotic, just a quiet ripple of respect that swept across the tables. People smiled at her, some nodded, a few mouthed thank you. She had never felt so seen and so exposed. Mrs. Elora approached her near the counter. "You've become quite the legend, Maya." "I never wanted attention," she replied. "That's what makes it powerful," the owner said. "People trust those who don't seek the spotlight." Maya was about to return to her section when she saw him, Cole standing by the bar again. But this time there was no arrogance in his posture, just humility. He didn't speak right away, just walked toward her, slowly, as if asking permission with every step. "May I?" he asked softly. Maya gave a slight nod. They moved to the same private room upstairs, this time filled with sunlight and less tension. "You saw the video," she said before he could speak. "I did. And the story, the comments, the judgment." He nodded. "Every word. And I deserved most of it." That surprised her. "I built my entire reputation on being untouchable," he said. "People feared me, admired me, but no one truly knew me, not until now." Maya crossed her arms. "And now that they do? I want to be better," he said. "But not for them, for you." She looked away, the walls of her heart pulling tight. "You don't owe me transformation," she said. "You owe yourself a chance to be more than what they made you." He reached into his coat again. No envelopes, no money, just a single notebook, worn and tattered. "This was my journal, from my first year after the fire. I wrote about you, about that day, about how I promised I'd never forget the girl who saved my life." "I didn't save you," Maya replied, barely above a whisper. "You did," he said, "because you reminded me that even in the darkest place, someone cared, someone stayed." She held the notebook in her hands, trembling slightly. Inside, her name was written dozens of times, sometimes in block letters, sometimes just the letter M, sometimes accompanied by drawings of trees, fire, and tiny, childlike prayers. Maya's throat tightened. "You were just a kid." "And yet, I remember thinking, oh, if I ever find her again, I won't waste the chance." They sat in the quiet again, the notebook open between them like a bridge. Finally, Cole broke the silence. You don't have to accept anything from me, Maya. Not the scholarship. Not the apology, not the attention. But if this story is going to be told, let it be ours, not just mine, not just yours. Let it be something honest. She looked him in the eyes. Then don't tell it alone. He blinked. What do you mean? Let's tell it together. Not for the likes, not for the interviews, but for the kids who feel invisible, the ones who survived what we did, and think they don't matter. Cole stared at her, stunned. Do you think people will listen? He asked. I don't know, Maya said, standing up with resolve, but I know we have to try. She held out her hand. He took it, and just like that, they weren't the broken kids from a fire anymore. They were survivors, and they were ready to turn their pain into something bigger than both of them. That evening, as Maya walked home under the golden twilight sky, her phone vibrated with a flood of new messages. One in particular caught her eye. A shared post with the caption, "This isn't just a story. This is a wake-up call." Thousands had commented. Even more had shared it. And as Maya scrolled through the heartfelt messages from strangers, many of them survivors too, she whispered something aloud she hadn't dared say before. I think I'm finally ready. She looked up at the fading sun and smiled. Sometimes stories spread not because they're perfect, but because someone, somewhere, needed to know they're not alone. And if you believe this story deserves to be heard, maybe now's the time to share it with someone who needs it most. A week later, Maya stood backstage at a community auditorium, fingers trembling slightly as she held a folded sheet of paper. The room beyond the curtain buzzed with soft chatter. Over 100 people seated for an event titled From Fire to Voice, A Story of Survival. Posters outside displayed a childhood photo of her and Cole, taken from the old orphanage archive, now restored and digitized. Cole stood beside her, far from the man who once ruled boardrooms with scorn. His presence now carried less steel and more soul. He wasn't performing. He was showing up as himself for the first time in years. You ready? He asked quietly. No, Maya whispered, but I'm willing. The curtain drew back slowly. Applause rippled through the room, warm and human. Not thunderous, not forced, just real. Maya walked to the mic first, her shoes clicking softly on the wooden stage. Her eyes scanned the crowd. Students, survivors, foster parents, social workers, strangers holding tissues in their laps. She exhaled deeply and began. I used to believe silence was survival, she said, that if I kept my head down, did my job, and avoided standing out, I could make it through life without attracting pain. She paused, letting the words settle, but silence didn't protect me, it buried me. Cole stepped up beside her, adding, and for me, power became a shield. I used money to avoid mirrors. I destroyed anyone who challenged me, because I was terrified of what would happen if I lost control. Maya turned to him, then back to the crowd. We didn't come here tonight as a millionaire and a waitress. We came as survivors of a system that forgot us, of a fire that changed everything, of years pretending the past didn't shape who we are. Cole continued, we're not here to be praised. We're here to remind you that healing begins with truth, that no amount of success or silence can substitute for facing what haunts you. A hushed stillness filled the room, the kind that means people aren't just listening, they're feeling. After the event, a long line formed. People didn't want autographs, they wanted to share. One woman clutched Maya's hands and said, my brother died in foster care. No one ever told his story. But tonight, I felt like he was remembered. A young man stepped forward and whispered to Cole, you're not who I thought you were. Thank you for showing me that even the powerful can change. Maya walked home later that night, her heels dangling from one hand, the city lights blinking softly across wet pavement. She felt lighter, not free of pain, but no longer caged by it. Her apartment felt different now too, less like a place to hide and more like a space to grow. She sat on her bed, pulling out a notebook, not to journal but to write, to finally give voice to her own story, not just the past, the now. She titled the page, The Girl with Ashes on Her Shoes, and began. Across the city, Cole entered his penthouse suite. It was silent as always, but instead of pouring a drink or retreating into emails, he walked to a shelf where dozens of business awards once stood and began boxing them away. One by one. In their place, he set the childhood drawing Maya had once made, the one he'd kept for over 20 years. Next to it, a framed printout of a comment left under their story. "This made me call my sister for the first time in 10 years. Thank you." He stared at it for a long while until his phone vibrated. A text from Maya. "Thinking of starting a podcast, survivors sharing their truths. Want in?" He smiled. "Always," he replied. A few days later, Maya and Cole sat in a modest studio above a bookstore that had offered them space for free. The podcast pilot was simple, raw, no sponsors, no fancy intro music, just 2 mics, 2 voices, and the weight of memory. "I'm Maya," she began, "and this is Voices from the Fire, a place for truth, for healing, and for those who thought no one would listen." "I'm Cole," he followed, "and if you're here, it means you've survived something too. Welcome." They shared stories. Failures, flashbacks, forgiveness. Their voices cracked, their laughter came unexpectedly, but above all, every word mattered. Listeners responded immediately, emails flooded in. One said, "I haven't talked about my abuse in 20 years, but after hearing your voices, I wrote my first journal entry today." Another, "My foster son didn't think anyone would understand what he went through. Now we listen to your podcast together." Maya read the messages late into the night, heart full and eyes blurred. She had spent most of her life trying not to feel. Now she felt everything, and she was finally okay with that. But not everyone celebrated their story. Late one evening, an anonymous email landed in Maya's inbox. Subject line, "The fire wasn't an accident." She stared at it, pulse quickening. Attached, a scanned copy of an old police report, partially redacted, with 2 lines highlighted. Origin point, laundry room. Accelerant suspected. Investigation closed due to lack of funding. Maya reread it 5 times. Someone had set that fire, and maybe it hadn't been meant to just destroy the building. She forwarded it to Cole. He called instantly. "This changes everything," he said. "Who would have wanted to hurt children?" Maya whispered. "Maybe someone who didn't want those kids to grow up and talk." A heavy silence passed between them. Cole finally said, "Then we need to find out who." "Together?" she asked. "Always," he said again. And just like that, their story, which they thought had found its closure, opened a new chapter. One neither of them were prepared for, one that would demand courage neither of them had ever known. But Maya looked at the screen, then at her own reflection in the darkened window, and said aloud to herself, "Let's finish what the fire started." The rain hadn't let up for days. It drizzled endlessly, blanketing the city in a fog of chill and grey. But Maya didn't notice. Her mind was deep in the past, buried in the ash and soot of a fire that had never truly gone cold. She sat cross-legged on the floor of her apartment, surrounded by documents spread out like puzzle pieces. Scanned case files, adoption records, newspaper clippings, and now, that email. The fire wasn't an accident. Those 5 words played on a loop in her head. The thought that someone had set the blaze that destroyed the orphanage, that left children dead and 2 survivors scarred for life, was no longer just a whisper of suspicion. It was a door creaking open into something darker. Cole arrived a few minutes later, his coat soaked, hair matted from the storm. He tossed his umbrella aside without a word and dropped to the floor next to her, taking in the papers. "Any new leads?" he asked. "Not yet," Maya murmured, "but I found this." She handed him a printed statement from one of the original caretakers at the orphanage. It had been buried in a scanned PDF of the city's fire archives. He read aloud, "A few days before the fire, we were told by upper management to begin transferring certain records off-site. When asked why, they said it was for legal protection, something about a pending audit. But then the fire happened, and everything was gone." Cole looked up. "That sounds like someone was covering tracks." "Exactly." Maya stood pacing. There was no audit filed, No investigation opened, no lawsuits. And now, 20 years later, this random email just appears with redacted police files. "You think it's someone inside?" Cole asked. "I think someone's watching." He nodded, jaw tightening. "Then we need to go deeper, offline." They decided to visit the only person still alive from the orphanage's administration, Ms. Evelyn Grant, now 76 years old and living alone in a retirement community just outside the city. It took 3 phone calls and a personal visit from Maya to convince her to talk. She agreed reluctantly to meet the next morning. Evelyn's apartment was pristine, lined with books and floral wallpaper. The woman herself was stiff-spined, alert despite her age, with sharp eyes that hadn't dulled over time. She served tea in delicate china, her fingers trembling only slightly as she poured. "You too," she said, staring at them over the rim of her glasses. "I remember your names, Maya and Cole. You were quiet children, always sitting under that tree." "We want to ask you about the fire," Maya said softly. Evelyn flinched. "You'll reopen wounds best left buried." "But someone sent us this," Cole said, sliding the printed email and report across the table. Evelyn read in silence. When she looked up again, her eyes glistened, but not from emotion, from fear. "You're not safe asking questions like these," she said. "Why?" Maya pressed. "What happened that night?" Evelyn leaned back, voice suddenly lower. There were donors involved with the orphanage, wealthy men who wanted more than to fund children's homes. They wanted control, access, records of every child, every weakness. Some came to visit in ways that made the staff uncomfortable. Cole's fists clenched on the table. Maya swallowed hard. "Are you saying there was abuse?" "I'm saying there were arrangements," Evelyn whispered. "And the fire came right after one of the staff threatened to go public." "Who?" Cole asked. "Joseph Barlow," she replied. "He worked maintenance, quiet, kept to himself, but he saw things. He kept records, files. He told me he was going to a lawyer." "What happened to him?" Maya asked. Evelyn's hands trembled as she reached into a small file box near her bookshelf. She handed over a yellowed obituary. "Joseph Barlow died in the fire." Maya scanned it, then frowned. "But this says he died of smoke inhalation. No autopsy." "There was no investigation," Evelyn said, her voice nearly breaking. "They wanted it gone, all of it. And now you're stirring ghosts." Cole stood, face pale. "Who are they, Evelyn?" She looked at him. Then her eyes drifted toward the window, as if someone might be watching. "There are still names I can't say. People with power, money. You speak too loudly, and you'll find yourself silenced." Maya reached over, touching her hand gently. "We just want the truth." Evelyn hesitated, then slowly nodded. "There's a storage unit," she said. "I kept copies of what Joseph gave me. I couldn't bring myself to burn them. It's under my name, but I haven't opened it in years." She scribbled the address onto a torn envelope. "But be careful," she warned. "Some stories are still dangerous." That night, Cole and Maya sat in her car outside the dimly lit storage facility. The rain had returned, heavier this time. It clattered against the roof like fingers tapping a warning. They entered the unit, flashlights in hand. Dust swirled in the air. Old boxes, folders, cassette tapes, photos, all labeled, all dated, and all untouched since before the fire. Maya opened a folder marked Confidential. Inside, lists of children, notes about medications, behavioral reports, and names. Names of visitors. One jumped off the page, Victor Langston. Cole's face drained of color. That's the man who adopted me." Maya stared at him. "You're sure?" Cole nodded. "He was one of the donors. He pulled me from the system, told me I was chosen, that he'd give me everything I deserved." Maya's voice cracked. "He was on these lists. He visited multiple times." They stared at the folder, the truth unraveling faster than they could hold it together. The fire wasn't just about silencing someone. It was about erasing an entire web of exploitation. And now, the only 2 people left who remembered were standing in the ashes. Suddenly, a noise echoed outside the storage unit. A shuffle. A shadow moved past the thin glass slit above the door. They froze. Cole turned off his flashlight. Maya grabbed his arm. "Don't move," she mouthed. Footsteps, then silence. Then, a loud bang against the side wall. They grabbed as much as they could and slipped out the back emergency exit. As they drove away, Maya's hands shook on the wheel. "Someone's watching," she said again. Cole looked at the evidence in his lap. "No," he whispered. "Someone's still trying to finish what they started." The headlights carved a shaky path through the pouring rain as Maya drove with white-knuckled focus, her breath coming in short bursts. Cole sat beside her, flipping through the stolen documents under the flickering glove-box light, trying to make sense of the chaos. They didn't speak much. The silence between them wasn't emptiness. It was loaded, charged, waiting to erupt. Every page Cole read made his hands tighter. Every glance Maya stole at the rearview mirror brought new waves of anxiety. They were being followed, she was sure of it. 2 blocks back, the same black sedan had matched every turn they made. No headlights. Just silent presence, watching, waiting. "Cole," she whispered, not taking her eyes off the road. "We're not alone." He twisted in his seat. There it was, faint, steady, unmistakable. His jaw clenched. "We need to lose them," he said. "I'm not exactly trained for high-speed chases," she replied, trying to suppress the panic crawling up her throat. "Left," he said. "Now." She swerved into an alleyway behind a row of closed shops. Trash cans flew, water splashed against the windshield, tires screeched, but the sedan didn't follow. Not yet. They emerged back onto a side road and pulled into an underground parking garage 2 blocks later. Maya killed the engine. The silence was deafening. For a moment, neither moved. Then Cole exhaled. "You okay?" "No," she said. "Are you?" "No." But they both knew there was no time to collapse. Not yet. They gathered the files, shoved them into backpacks, and took the stairs up into the side entrance of an old hotel where Cole still owned a seldom-used suite. Once inside, Maya finally allowed herself to breathe. The room was dark, furnished in sleek grays and blacks. A city view stretched across the wide windows, rain blurring the lights like tears on glass. Cole dropped the bags onto the floor, sat on the edge of the bed, and stared at nothing. "What now?" Maya asked softly. He looked at her, his eyes hollow. "We go public." "Cole, that could destroy everything, your name, your company, your life." "Maybe it should," he said quietly. Maya sank into the armchair across from him. "We don't even know who we're dealing with," she said. "We have partial names, old records, and a dead janitor. No clear villain, no full picture." "Then we paint it," Cole said, piece by piece. He pulled out a folder labeled Langston Industries, Private Access. Inside were financial records, donations, investments, and what appeared to be hush payments issued over several years, all tied to the orphanage under shell organizations. "This is how he operated," Cole explained. "He used charity as a shield, tax write-offs to hide real motives. My adoption, it was part of his image. He liked the idea of being a savior." Maya looked down at her hands. "So you were a trophy?" He nodded. "And I never saw it," her voice cracked. "And I was just discarded, moved, forgotten." "But not anymore," he said. "Now we have a voice." Maya stood and walked to the window. Lightning lit up the skyline for a brief moment. In that flash, she saw herself, not the timid girl from the past, but the woman who had faced down a billionaire and lived to tell it. "Let's record something," she said. Cole blinked. "Now?" "Right now. Not a podcast episode, a confession, a truth bomb. We don't need perfect editing, just raw facts, names, files, a message. If anything happens to us, it needs to be out there." He nodded. They set up a camera on a tripod from the closet, dimmed the lights, and hit record. Maya stood in front, her voice trembling at first, but gaining strength with every sentence. "My name is Maya Torres, 20 years ago, I survived a fire at a children's home that was ruled an accident. I now believe it was something else entirely." She paused. "I have evidence, names, financial records, testimonies, and I'm not alone." Cole stepped into the frame. "My name is Cole Whitaker. I was adopted shortly after that fire by one of the orphanage's top donors. I've recently discovered that adoption may have been part of a long pattern of corruption and cover-ups. If you're seeing this, it means the truth can't be buried anymore." Maya added, "We're not investigators. We're not heroes. We're survivors. And we believe you deserve to know what was done, and by whom." They ended the video and uploaded it to a secure cloud drive, scheduling it to publish in 24 hours, unless cancelled manually. A digital dead man's switch. "I can't believe we just did that," Maya whispered, staring at the countdown. Cole looked at her. "Neither can I, but it was the right move." He poured her a glass of water and handed it to her. Her hands were shaking. As she drank, her phone vibrated. Unknown number. One text. "You should have stayed quiet." She showed Cole. His expression darkened. "They know we're not bluffing now." Maya looked at him, voice firm despite the fear in her chest. "Good. Let them come." That night, Cole didn't sleep. He sat by the window, watching the city, reviewing files, planning the next move. Maya, wrapped in a blanket on the couch, finally drifted into a restless sleep just before dawn. At 5:03 a.m., Cole's phone rang. Private number. He hesitated, then answered. A deep, calm voice spoke. "You've made a mistake." Cole didn't respond. The voice continued. "You think truth is enough to protect you. It isn't. Some people buy silence for a reason." "Who are you?" Cole asked. The line clicked dead. He stared at the screen for several long seconds, then walked into the bathroom, splashed water on his face, and looked into the mirror. He saw the boy again, the one who pulled Maya out of fire, the one who swore he'd never let her get hurt again. And in that reflection, he found his answer. He walked back to the laptop, opened the file titled Emergency Drop, and prepared it for release. If the world wanted war, they were finally ready. But as dawn broke and the rain eased, neither of them knew that the people they were fighting were far closer than they imagined, watching, listening, waiting, and one of them was already in their circle. By morning, the city had dried, but the tension between Maya and Cole had only thickened. They sat across from each other at the small table in Cole's suite, sipping bitter coffee and barely touching their food. On the screen between them, the countdown ticked steadily. 15 hours, 32 minutes until public release. Maya leaned forward. "What if we've missed something? What if we've put all this out and they spin it? Discredit us, make us look like we're out for attention." "They might," Cole admitted, "but they can't erase the paper trail, not this time." She nodded slowly, but her fingers drummed the edge of the table. Then a sudden buzz came from her phone. Rosa. Rosa. The name itself was a breath of comfort, until she opened the message. "Maya, someone came into the restaurant asking about you, said he was family. I didn't believe him, but he knew your last foster home address. He left a card." A photo followed. Cole leaned over. The card was plain black. No name. Just an embossed silver crest, one Maya hadn't seen in years, until now. Her voice caught. "That symbol, it was on the van that picked me up from my last placement. The man who drove it. He didn't work for the state." Cole's eyes narrowed. "They've been watching since before the fire," she nodded. "They didn't just want the orphanage gone, they wanted control over the survivors." "Why?" "Because we saw something. Or maybe because we knew something." Cole stood, pacing. "There are more files in that unit. Tapes, photos. Evelyn said she kept everything Joseph Barlow gave her." "We didn't have time to grab it all," Maya said. "Then we go back." She flinched. "After last night, we'll be careful. Daylight. No patterns, no phones." She hesitated, but then said what they were both thinking. "If we don't finish this now, they will." They left the suite by foot, splitting up until they reached a rental car 2 blocks away. Cole had borrowed a friend's ID using a corporate membership to keep his name off any lists. By noon, they were standing once again in front of Storage Unit 17. The air was dry but heavy. The lock clicked open, and the door creaked upward like a vault revealing memory itself. Inside, dust danced in the sunlight, slicing through the slats. They dug in silence. Maya opened a box labeled audio. Cassette tapes. Hundreds, each with handwritten dates and initials. Cole found one marked VL. Langston. Maya nodded, her heart pounding. It has to be. They slipped the tape into a small player found in the same box and hit play. A voice crackled. Male, confident, cold. The children don't remember anything. The girl was sedated before the interviews. The boy is subservient. If he speaks, we'll have to move him. Or remove him. Maya felt sick. Cole gripped the edge of the shelf to steady himself. That's him, he said. That's Victor. Another voice entered. Lower. Nervous. What about the janitor, Barlow? Taken care of, the fire's scheduled for Friday night. Leave the back gate unlocked, we'll finish what we started. The tape hissed, then ended. Maya stared at the player, unable to speak. Proof, voices, confessions. They had it. But something felt off. She scanned the shelves again, then froze. One photo stood out, buried under a stack of files. A printed photo of two children, Maya and Cole, sitting in the grass. And behind them, blurred in the background, stood a woman Maya recognized. Her throat tightened. It was Evelyn. Later that evening, back at the suite, the silence between them cracked under the weight of revelation. She knew, Maya said, pacing. She said she kept records to protect the truth, but she was there. That photo proves it. Cole sat still, processing. She was scared. Maybe she thought she was doing the right thing by giving us those files. Or maybe, Maya said, she was playing both sides. They had no way of knowing, but they had to confront her before the countdown expired. They drove to the retirement complex again. It was nearly dusk. The front receptionist recognized them and waved them up without question. Evelyn answered the door, looking different this time, paler, as if she'd been expecting them. I knew you'd come back, she said. Why didn't you tell us you were there that night? Maya asked without preamble. Evelyn's face didn't flinch. Because I didn't think it mattered anymore. It matters, Cole said. You were in the background of a photo taken the day of the fire. I was told not to speak, she said. By who? Langston. Maya's voice was barely a whisper. So you knew what they were doing? I suspected, Evelyn replied, but by the time I understood the full extent, it was too late. I kept the records because I couldn't live with the guilt, but I didn't know what to do with them. I was just a secretary. They had money, power, they threatened my son. Maya blinked. You have a son? He's grown now. Changed his name. I did what I had to do to protect him. Cole's eyes locked on hers. So you stayed quiet? Evelyn nodded, tears finally slipping down her cheeks. I thought I was saving one life, she whispered, but I let so many others suffer. Maya knelt in front of her. Then help us make it right. Tell your story, on record, with your face, your name. Evelyn stared at her, shaking, then finally said, yes. Back at the suite, they filmed Evelyn's full statement. Names, dates, details. Her voice cracked, but she didn't stop. It was raw, shattering, and when they uploaded it to the same file as their scheduled release, the screen showed 9 hours, 12 minutes remaining. Then came the final twist. Cole's phone lit up with an email notification. Subject line, "This is your final warning." Attached was a single photo, grainy, zoomed in. Taken from outside Maya's apartment window. It showed her sleeping on the couch. Cole's chest went cold. Maya's voice shook. They were inside. He grabbed his coat. We end this now. The hours that followed were slow and sacred. Maya sat by the window, knees pulled to her chest, watching the lights of the city blink quietly in the dark. She hadn't turned on the TV. She hadn't checked her phone again. There was too much noise in the world. And right now, she needed silence. Inside that silence, something else stirred. Not fear, not pain, something deeper. Conviction. A realization that this fight they had stepped into was never just about exposing a crime. It was about facing the shadows of the past with courage and letting those shadows lead them to light. Cole sat at the dining table, flipping through Evelyn's signed testimony once more, rereading every word like scripture. His eyes were tired, but his spirit was alert. "It's strange," Maya said suddenly, still looking out the window, "how something so evil could lead us here." Cole looked up. "What do you mean?" She turned to him. "The fire was meant to erase us, bury us, make sure we never spoke again, but instead, we became the ones carrying the truth." He nodded slowly, letting the weight of her words sink in, and then Maya whispered something so soft, Cole barely heard it. "I used to think God forgot me in that fire." Cole's expression softened. "I thought the same thing." She turned back to the window. "But now I wonder, maybe he wasn't absent. Maybe he was waiting. For the right time. For the right moment to raise the truth back from the ashes." Silence again, but this time it wasn't empty. It was holy. Maya reached into the bookshelf and pulled out an old worn Bible her grandmother had given her when she turned 18. She had never opened it much. Not since the foster years. Not since life got too noisy. She ran her fingers along the cracked spine. Then she opened to a page marked long ago, Isaiah 61:3. "To provide for those who grieve in Zion, to bestow on them a crown of beauty instead of ashes, the oil of joy instead of mourning, and a garment of praise instead of a spirit of despair." Tears welled in her eyes. "That's us," she whispered. "That's what he's been doing all along." Cole listened quietly as she continued. "He let us walk through fire, not to burn us, but to refine us, to strip away the lies, the fear, the silence, and give us something stronger than survival." He whispered, "Faith." She nodded. "And purpose." They sat together now, side by side. And Maya flipped again, stopping at a passage she'd underlined years ago and forgotten, Romans 8:28. "And we know that in all things God works for the good of those who love him, who have been called according to his purpose." Cole stared at the verse. "I've spent so much of my life chasing money," he said. "Success, control. I thought it made me untouchable, but it only made me hollow." Maya turned to him. "That's because you weren't made to build a kingdom for yourself." He met her eyes. "You were made to build a testimony." She reached for his hand. "Maybe we both were." That night, the countdown hit 4 hours. Maya and Cole sat down to record one last message, not for exposure, not for justice, but for the hearts listening who were still carrying their own fires, buried in silence. Maya spoke first. "If you've ever felt abandoned, like God left you in the smoke, I need you to know something. He was there, even when you didn't see him, even when the world tried to bury you. He remembered." Cole followed. "If you've built your life around control, thinking success will erase your pain, I promise you it won't. The only thing that heals is truth and grace and the kind of love you can't buy or fake." Maya held up her Bible. "If you've never opened this before, so please start somewhere, anywhere. Let God meet you where you are. He's not afraid of your fire." She flipped to another verse, hands trembling, but voice firm. Psalm 34:18. "The Lord is close to the brokenhearted and saves those who are crushed in spirit." Cole added, "And maybe you think your story is over. But what if it's just beginning?" Maya smiled softly. "Because if God could bring 2 forgotten kids from the ashes of a burned-down orphanage and use them to shine a light into darkness, then he can use you too." The upload was scheduled, final footage compiled, every file encrypted and backed up in 3 countries. If anything happened, the world would see it all. But what mattered most now was what they had already reclaimed. Not revenge, not reputation, but faith and identity. For the first time in years, they knew who they were. Not victims, not survivors, not titles on a headline, but children of a God who sees, restores, and never wastes a wound. As they sat on the couch in silence, watching the final hours tick down, Maya leaned her head against Cole's shoulder. She whispered, "Do you think people will believe us?" Cole's voice was steady. "Doesn't matter." She looked up. He smiled. "Because God does." And that was enough. The countdown had reached 1 hour. Outside, the city glowed under a restless night sky. Inside, Maya and Cole sat in the suite with the lights low, their eyes fixed on the screen as each minute slipped away. Every file, every recording, every testimony was loaded and ready to be unleashed. There was no turning back. And yet the weight in the room wasn't fear, it was resolve. "This is it," Maya said quietly. "Once this goes live, we can't control what happens." Cole leaned forward, elbows on his knees. "We're not doing this to control. We're doing it to free the truth." A knock at the door broke the silence. They froze. Cole motioned for her to stay back as he moved to the door. He looked through the peephole, then relaxed. It was Evelyn. She stepped inside, a little out of breath, clutching a manila envelope. "I had to come before it's too late," she said, placing the envelope on the table. "This is the last piece you need." Maya opened it carefully. Inside was a single photograph. High resolution, dated 2 days before the fire. It showed Victor Langston shaking hands with a city official inside the orphanage. Behind them, children played. The official's face was familiar from the news, a man who still held public office. "This proves it wasn't just him," Maya whispered. "It was bigger, it still is." Cole looked at Evelyn. "Why give this to us now?" "Because I finally believe you'll finish what I couldn't," she said. "And because I want my son to know I stood for something before I leave this world." Her voice cracked on the last word, but she didn't let the tears fall. 40 minutes left. Cole began uploading the final set of documents, integrating Evelyn's new photo into the drop. Maya paced the room, every step echoing her pounding heartbeat. Then, the suite's phone rang. Landline. Unlisted number. Cole picked it up. A voice, smooth, calm, and cold, spoke, "If you release that file, you will both regret it. Walk away now, and this ends here." Cole didn't answer. The voice continued. "Your children playing with matches, and we both know what happens when there's fire." Maya walked over and pressed the speaker button. "We already survived one fire," she said. "We'll survive the next." There was a pause, then a slow, quiet laugh before the line went dead. They didn't speak for several moments after that. Finally, Cole turned to her. "We finished this." The last 10 minutes passed like seconds. The city outside felt louder somehow. Sirens in the distance, muffled traffic, the hum of life carrying on. Maya sat at the computer, cursor hovering over the final confirmation button. "Ready?" she asked. Cole nodded. "Together." They pressed it at the same time. The upload bar completed. Files duplicated to multiple backup servers. Emails triggered to journalists, advocacy groups, and online communities. It was done. The response was immediate. Within minutes, notifications flooded in. Hashtags trended. Journalists called. The photo of Langston and the city official went viral. Evelyn's testimony was shared across every platform imaginable. Survivors began to come forward. The city council announced an emergency inquiry within hours, but with the storm came the inevitable pushback. Smear campaigns, character assassinations, threats. It didn't matter, because for the first time the truth wasn't locked away in a dusty storage unit or buried in a forgotten report. It was alive, in the open, untouchable. 2 weeks later, Maya stood at the steps of City Hall with Cole beside her. Cameras flashed, reporters shouted questions, but she wasn't there for them. She was there for the children who didn't get to grow up, for Joseph Barlow, for every survivor still in the shadows. Cole spoke first. "This isn't about one man or one institution. This is about an entire system that thought it could operate in darkness. We're here to say, no more." Maya took the microphone, her voice steady. "We were children when the fire tried to erase us. We stand here today as proof that light will always find a way through the smoke. If you've been silenced, if you've been told your story doesn't matter, hear me now. It does. The crowd erupted into applause, not the polite kind, but the roar of people who had been waiting for someone to say those words. Cole glanced at her with quiet pride, and for the first time, they felt like the chapter had truly closed. That evening, they returned to the bistro where it all began. Same corner table, same city skyline through the windows. But everything was different. Rosa joined them, sliding into the booth with a grin. "You know, I was here the night you two almost burned this place down with tension. Now look at you, burning down corruption instead." Maya laughed softly. "Guess some fires are worth starting." Cole raised his glass. "To truth. To freedom," Maya added. They clinked glasses. As they left the restaurant, the streets glowed under the warm haze of street lamps. Maya paused on the sidewalk, looking up at the sky. "Feels strange," she said, "like it's finally over." Cole smiled. "Or maybe it's just the beginning." She looked at him, a small smile playing at her lips. "Whatever it is, we face it together. Always," he said. They walked on, their steps in sync. And somewhere deep in her heart, Maya knew. The girl who once thought silence was survival had learned to speak, not just for herself but for others. The fire had tried to consume them, but instead it had forged them. If you followed their journey this far, you know this story was never just about survival. It was about transformation. If it moved you, inspired you, or made you think about your own battles, I invite you to join this community. Subscribe to hear more stories that matter. Like this video if it spoke to you, and watch the one on your screen now. It might be the reminder you need today. Because sometimes, the truth you hear is the one that sets you free.